In a union hall in Flint, Michigan, in 1969, one word from a tool and die man named Walt would have finished another man for good. A fellow they called Cubby had done something small and ugly, and Walt had seen all of it. The men leaned in, waiting to hear it said. Walt took his coffee black and talked about the weather. He never said the word, not that night, not ever. I was 18, watching the most respected man in that hall do the thing that made him so. He refused to spend a man already down. Rooms like that, the Union Hall, the Lodge, the Corner Tavern, were where a man's name got made. After the war, they emptied and took the code with them. Number 28, the money one, lands in a few minutes and explains most of the rest. Number 2 is the rule these men guarded hardest, the one Walt was living that night. Number 1 is the thing every refusal here was only a way of doing. Number 30, in the Corner Tavern after a shift, in the hour the men of that block kept for themselves, he would not get drunk in front of the crew. A beer, 2, and he was done. These were the men who stood beside him at dawn with their hands near the same machines. A foundry man on my first job kept to his 2 for 40 years, and the men trusted him for it. Number 29. There was a thing he would not do with money, and that was show it. A new watch, a good year, a little put by, none of it went on display, and you found out a man had done well only years later by accident from somebody else. In the Union Hall, a man's worth was taken quietly, never counted off his sleeve, and the ones who flashed it only put distance between themselves and the men they stood beside. He wanted no distance there. Number 28, and here is where the money comes in. He would not ask what you made, and he would not tell you what he made. I asked an older man on my first crew what the job paid him a week, and he looked at me a moment and said a man's wages were between him, his wife, and the good Lord. Money was the one thing that could sort men into ranks, line them up tallest to shortest, and he would not let it. He wanted to be judged on the part of him that had no number on it. Hold on to that one, because the rest of this list grows out of it. Number 27, he let a man finish. Even when the fellow was wrong, even when everyone in the room could see where the sentence was headed and ached to jump in, he held himself still and let it land. There was a patience in it that is almost gone now. Picture 2 men, one who waited and one who cut in, and tell me which one the room leaned toward when it came time to decide something that mattered. The waiter, every time. A man who can hold his own mouth in check can usually be trusted with bigger things. Number 26, credit that belonged to somebody else he would not take. A foreman in a stamping plant once stood in front of the whole line and handed a younger man the credit for a fix the foreman himself had thought up. He did it on purpose, plain as day, and not one man on that line missed it. They said nothing, but they knew after that exactly what kind of man they worked for, and you cannot buy that knowing. Number 25, catch you in a mistake, and he would not correct you in front of others. He took you aside after, by the time clock or out at the cars, and set you straight where no one else could hear. My father did this with me until the day he died. He never once made me small in a room full of people. Whatever I had coming, and sometimes I had it coming, I got it in private. This next one separated the men who were respected from the men who were merely liked. Number 24, the talk would turn, the way talk does, toward some fellow who had stepped out for a minute. He said the same thing about you when you walked off as he said to your face, and the men sitting there noticed every time which fellows did that and which did not. To your face or to your back, there was only the one verdict on you, and you never had to wonder which one was the real one. Number 23, you could work beside him for years and never hear about the war, or the thing he did the night of the flood in '53, or the brother he put through school on his own back. He would not tell you what he had done. It reached you sideways from a third party, usually after the man was already gone, and he carried it that quietly because saying it loud would have cheapened it. The next one looked like nothing at all, a man simply being where he said he would be. 40 years of it told the other men plenty. Number 22, he would not keep another man waiting. He stood at the mill gate 10 minutes early for 40 years, in the dark and in the snow, and the foreman set his watch by him. He was not showing off. He just never believed his own time was worth more than the next man's. Now this next one is the one my father would not let a man slide on, not ever. Number 21, he would not break his word, even a word he only gave out loud over a fence. There was no contract. There was no paper. He told you he would be there Saturday to help you move the stove, and the stove got moved Saturday, and that was the end of the discussion. I watched two men start out the same way in life, both poor, both decent enough on the surface. One kept his word, and one let it slide whenever keeping it got inconvenient. 30 years on, one of them had a town of men who would drop anything to help him, and the other had a town that was polite to his face and nothing more. The word was the entire difference between those two lives. Now think about the last time a stranger gave you his full attention. Not half of it with one eye somewhere else, the whole of it. For a lot of men past a certain age, the honest answer is they cannot remember the last time it happened. Something particular happens to a man when he gets old in this country now. The doctor's office calls him by his first name like he is a boy. The young fellow at the counter talks right over the top of him. He gives up his seat out of 50 years of habit, and nobody thinks to give him one back. He spent his whole life inside a code where a man was weighed carefully and then treated according to what the weighing turned up, and now he has outlived the room that did the weighing. That is the real cost of losing all of this. The men who live by these refusals are walking around their own towns unseen, and they feel it every single day. Number 20, the last of anything, the best seat, the first place in line, he would not take it. He hung back. Let the older men eat first, let another fellow have the good chair by the stove, took the heel of the bread without a word. It cost him next to nothing, and it told everyone in the room that here was a man who was not going to be a reacher. Number 19, a favor he could not pay back, he would not ask for. He hated owing. If he could not return a thing, he went without it and said nothing. Some of that was plain pride, and I have never pretended otherwise. But there was a dignity in it, too, in a man who would carry his own load before he made it quietly yours. What does it do to a friendship over the years when one man is always owing and never quite squares it? Number 18. His yes was yes and his no was no, and he would not stack 6 reasons on top of either one to win you over. A man who over-explained was a man quietly asking your permission to hold his own opinion, and these men were not in the business of asking. They said the thing once, plain, and let it sit there. Number 17. Another man's wife, his home, whatever was going wrong behind that door, he would not talk about it. Every neighborhood had its troubles, and everybody half knew them anyway. But the man who had the room's respect kept his eyes forward and his mouth shut, and when he passed a fellow whose house was quietly coming apart, he looked at him no different than he had the day before any of it started. The next one is the one I watched change a whole room without a speech. Number 16. He would not gloat, and he would not kick a man who is already down. This is the one Walt was living that night in the hall, and it ran deeper than just holding your tongue. When a man lost his job, or his wife left, or he got caught in something foolish, the men worth respecting did not pile on. They did the opposite. He found some small, ordinary reason to stand next to that fellow in front of everybody, to be seen with him, so the room understood the man was not getting thrown away over it. I watched an old millwright do this for a kid who had wrecked a machine through pure carelessness. The kid was standing there waiting to be made an example of. Instead, the millwright wandered over, asked him a question about the car he was fixing up, and the two of them talked engines for 10 minutes, while the rest of us watched and learned something we did not yet have words for. Number 15. He would not beg for work, and he would not let you see him plead for it. When the layoffs came, and in a place like Flint they always came eventually, a certain kind of man went down to the hall with his hat in his hands but his back straight, asked once, clean, and when the answer was no, he said thank you, and went home and figured out something else. He would not grovel. I saw my own father laid off in a bad stretch, and I never once heard him plead, not to a foreman, not to a banker, not at our own kitchen table at night. He just got a little quieter and started getting up a little earlier. To this day, I do not fully know what it cost him, because he refused to ever let me see the bill. Number 14, he would not complain. And here I have to tell you the truth about this one, because it is the one we get sentimental over, and it is the one that did the most quiet damage. The code said a man did not talk about his pain, his back, his chest, the thing the doctor said at the last visit, the worry that kept him staring at the ceiling. He bore it and said nothing, and we admired him for the silence. But I have buried friends over this rule. Good men who would not say they were hurting until the hurting was the kind you do not walk back from. Men who sat at that tavern with a pain running down the left arm and ordered one more and went home and did not wake up, because admitting it out loud would have felt like complaining. And complaining was the one thing they had sworn off. I honor the restraint in it. I do. But some of these men kept their mouths shut all the way down into the ground, and I will not stand here and pretend that part of it was noble, because it was not. Number 13. He would not use your worst moment against you. He filed it away somewhere, your bad night, the thing you said when you were drunk and grieving, and he never once took it back out and used it as a weapon the next time the two of you came down on opposite sides of something. A small man saves up your failures for ammunition. A man worth standing near, let them go for good. Think what that builds in a fellow, knowing a man is holding your worst day in his hand and will never throw it. Number 12. He shook the plant manager's hand and the floor sweeper's hand the same way, with the same grip and the same look, and he would not put on a second face for whoever was watching. The way he treated you when the bosses were standing there was the way he treated you when it was only the crew. You always knew where you stood with him, because there was no second story to keep straight. That sounds like a small thing to a younger man. It is the rarest thing on this entire list. Number 11. He would not carry a man standing out of the room that was built to hold it. This is that room, finally, so let me tell you what it actually was. A working man in that era lived a good part of his life inside 3 places that were just for men. The Union Hall, where the crew settled its business and took its honest measure of one another. The Lodge, the Elks, or the Moose, or the Odd Fellows, where a man's character was a matter of record that other men kept. And the corner tavern, where the hour after the whistle belonged to the men of that block and nobody else. Inside those rooms, a man's reputation was made and tested and protected, and the unspoken law was that what happened to your standing in there stayed in there. A grievance got settled in the hall and did not follow you home down the street. A man's bad stretch was known in the lodge and went no further than the door. Those rooms did work that nothing does for a man now, because they were the only place other men could actually watch you keep the code or break it. And then, one by one, they emptied, and the room that weighed a man was simply gone. In the middle of the 1950s, those rooms were as full as they were ever going to get. About 1 working man in 3 carried a union card then, and the hall ran meetings a man did not miss without a reason. The lodges across this country counted their members in the millions, real numbers, whole buildings downtown, with their names cut into the stone. The corner taverns sat on nearly every block in a working neighborhood, and a man walked to his after the whistle. He did not drive. Then it came apart across about 20 years, and not because anyone set out to end it. The work moved away or vanished, so the Union Hall lost its crowd. The television came into every front room in America, so the tavern lost its evenings to a screen. The young families moved out to where the houses had lawns and no sidewalks and no corner left to put a tavern on. By the early 1970s, the 3 rooms that had held a man's character steady for 100 years were mostly memory. And a man weighed by no one is a man who can get away with nearly anything, which is a colder kind of freedom than it sounds. If any of this is landing for you, if you are sitting there nodding because you knew these rooms or you knew these men, do one thing for me and subscribe. I put one of these out every week, and they are getting harder to make because the men who remember all of it firsthand are going one at a time now. Stay in the room with the rest of us who still do. Number 10, he had the cousin on the city council, the brother-in-law down at the bank, the foreman who owed him a turn. And he would not trade on a bit of it. He would not drop a name to get himself to the front, would not let on that he had a string he could pull, because pulling it would have meant admitting he could not get there on his own 2 feet. He would rather stand in the same line as you than show you that he did not have to. A man's name could ride on the next one, and they all knew it. Number 9. He would not leave a debt, and he would not walk out on a tab. He paid what he owed, on the day it was owed, in full. And if he genuinely could not pay yet, he came and told you so to your face instead of crossing the street when he saw you. A bartender in a mill town carried a few men on credit for years and never lost a dime on it, because the men who drank there would have skipped their own meals before they skipped that debt. Number 8. He would not laugh at another man's expense. There is a particular kind of laughter that costs somebody, the joke that needs a man in the room made smaller so the rest can feel a little bigger, and these men would not lend their voice to it. My grandfather had a way of simply not laughing, of letting a cruel joke drop into a silence and die right there on the floor, and that silence corrected more behavior than any lecture could. The fellows around him learned what he would and would not laugh at, and over time they shaped themselves to it. The next one is the one the other men leaned on without ever saying it out loud. Number 7. When the work turned miserable, the cold pour, the double shift, the rotten January weather on an outdoor crew, he would not be the first to fold. He stayed in it 1 beat longer than was reasonable, and the men beside him stayed because he was staying. One man's refusal to break has held a whole crew together more times than I could count for you. Number 6. He would not take a handout he had not earned. Offer him something for nothing, and he got uncomfortable, a little insulted even. He would take a hand up, a loan he fully meant to repay, a fair trade of one man's labor for another's. But charity, that asked nothing back of him, felt like being told to his face that he could not stand on his own, and he could. Call it pride if you want to. I would just ask what we quietly lost when we stopped feeling any of it. This next one cost a man more to keep than almost anything else on the list. Number 5. He would not let his trouble show on his face at work. Whatever was waiting for him at home, the sick child, the stack of bills, the marriage gone cold and quiet, he left it out in the truck. He walked onto that floor with the same steady face every single morning, not because he felt steady, but because he had decided his troubles were his own to carry and not to unload onto the men working next to him. There is a man I still think about who lost a child one winter and was back on the line that Monday with nothing on his face but the work in front of him. It took me years to understand that the steadiness was not coldness, it was about the heaviest courtesy one man can pay another. Number 4. He would not make a promise he was not sure he could keep. He was careful with the words "I will," because the second they left his mouth, they turned into a stone he was going to have to carry somewhere. He would tell you "I will try," and mean it down to the ground, before he would tell you "I will," and then fail it. My father weighed a promise before he made it the way another man weighs a thing in the store before he buys it. So when he finally did say he would, you could consider it already done. The last 3 are the ones a man could not fake, even if he tried. Number 3. In a hard conversation, he would not look away. When something difficult had to pass between 2 men, an apology owed, a debt named out loud, a truth that was going to sting, he met your eyes and kept them there. He did not study his own shoes, did not talk it off toward the wall. 2 men squared up over a thing that genuinely mattered, and the one who could hold the other's gaze without flinching was the one with nothing hidden anywhere on him. Number 2. He would not repeat what he was told in confidence. This is the one I made you wait the whole way for, and it is the one Walt was living the night I started on that floor. Tell a man like him something that could hurt you if it ever traveled, and it went down into him and stopped there. It did not come back out at the tavern on a slow night, or the next time he was good and angry at you, or years down the road dressed up as a story he told on somebody. Walt held a dozen men's worst secrets the way a vault holds money it has no opinion about, and that is exactly why, when Walt finally did decide to speak, every man in that hall went still to hear what it was. A man who keeps your secret has handed you proof, quietly, day after day, that his loyalty does not bend in the moment it would be easiest to bend it. That was worth more than anything he could ever have said out loud. Number one, and after all of it, after 30 refusals counted down, here is the single thing they were all only ever a way of doing. He would not make himself bigger by making another man smaller. That is the whole of it, and it came down to a sentence a man might say to his son exactly once and never repeat. You do not raise yourself up by standing on somebody else. He had settled that somewhere early, that his own standing would never once be built out of another man's smallness. And other men can feel that settled thing in a fellow. They feel it the way you feel the warmth coming off a stove before your hand ever touches it. What they were respecting was never the manners. It was the decision sitting underneath them, the one he made long before you ever met him. We know it worked. We watched it work on shop floors and in union halls and across 1,000 kitchen tables for the better part of 100 years. Quiet men with nothing much in their pockets commanded a respect that men with real money still cannot buy. What I cannot answer after all this time is why we were so quick to call that restraint weakness and set it down. We let the rooms that taught it go quiet. We drifted off, and most of us could not tell you the day we stopped. The men who lived it are nearly gone now, and you and I are about the last who saw it up close. The least we can do is remember what it was, and say so out loud while there is still someone left who can.